thanks for asking us to come and do this talk. It's something that we're both super passionate about, and the things that we do wouldn't be possible without Momento Pro and the awesome products that you guys provide, which are so unique as well. So it's a really cool opportunity for us to talk about what we do, but in the context of something that's real and tangible and other people can do too. So we can't see everybody's names easily, so I don't know how much of the group here that we actually know or know us. So we're just going to do a quick rundown of like who we are and a bit about our business, and then we'll go on from there. Do you want to start?
Well, Heartstory started 10 years ago, so it's Katie's baby. We met 8 years ago, nearly, and I was in Sydney. I wouldn't say you dragged me, but I was ready to leave Sydney. I'd had enough, so I moved to Canberra early 2013.
Yep.
14.
End of 2013.
And we've been working together since then. So one of the really cool things about Katie and I is that we both have our own unique style, but I think we melted quite well as a partnership in terms of what we both brought to Heartstory. So Katie's really about the feels and capturing emotion, and I was quite mechanical in the way that I structured families and posed them most of the sessions that I did were on location, but I think the way that we both melted into each other, and we worked side by side for at least 2 years, shooting every single session.
I think it might have only been 1 year.
But we rubbed off on each other enough that we were pretty much shooting the same thing. I think our styles
are like, I only think people, maybe technical photographers who know us really well would probably be the only ones who could actually pick us, whose work is whose, because we really have, and as time's gone on, I think couples do that anyway, but as time's gone by, we've become even more similar. We have our own strengths and weaknesses, but and the other thing that you didn't say, which I think is really relevant, is that one of the things about our style which stands out to our clients, and possibly to other photographers as well, is that we have a certain approach to environmental portraiture, and shooting outside in the environment and really using the environment to create beautiful art. And we both did that right from the start. When we met, we realised, Jeremy was doing it in the beaches and I was doing it in the forests, and so that could kind of come together and create a style that we both can emulate really well. So we shoot. We think it's about 60% outdoor sessions, 40% studio at the moment, but it does vary from year to year depending on. And
that kind of evolved at the start of 2018 when we moved to a commercial space. So before that, we were probably shooting 10 to 15% in the studio.
Oh no, there was a point where we were doing 50-50, remember, when we first moved in. So I think it's varied a lot over the years, depending on marketing campaigns, depending on projects we've been running, depending on our space, our own timetables.
Well, we had a child at the start of 2018. So Katie kind of stopped.
I technically stepped out of the business for a while.
Yeah, but she's probably working twice as hard anyway. So with that, we had a serious discussion about the type of work that we wanted to do, so that I wasn't working till late hours, because we shoot around the best time of day, which is morning and afternoon. So we're like, how can we make it so that I'm not out in the mornings and the afternoons and I'm back at a reasonable hour? So we decided to start a project, which was a studio-based project where I think I was shooting maybe 60% of the sessions were in the studio.
Yeah, because he can only do a certain number outside, but he could do a lot more in the studio. So yeah, for that year, I think we had 60-40 studio, 40% outside.
So we geared the business around our personal lives. So
you've adapted as things have changed.
Yeah.
So that's when I did the Kids and Animals book.
So as a sort of, I guess our business overall is primarily portraits. We occasionally do a wedding. We eased back from weddings several years ago because portraits just make more money. And as business people, that was our decision. You can work less hours and make more money with portraits.
I'd had enough.
Yeah,
there was actually a conversation that went, what sort of work do you want to do? And I'm like, weddings? No, thanks. I've had enough.
And I must admit, I do enjoy shooting certain types of weddings, particularly laid back weddings with couples that I really relate to, but I don't really enjoy shooting like really high-end, big-scale affairs because I don't feel I can relate as easily to what's happening. It's important to me that I'm connected with my clients in whatever way, whether it's being silly together or whether it's values or, you know, or whatever it is. So I found certain types of weddings quite challenging. So yeah, this is where we are now. We shoot about 300 family portraits a year. Like we said, probably at the moment it's about 60% outdoors, 40% in studio, and our in-studio shoots tend to be babies and newborns under the age of 1, babies under the age of 1, and it's a bit more project-based in the studio. So
that works out to be about, roughly we shoot about 8 sessions a week.
Yeah,
so
about average. It does vary a little bit seasonally as well, but yeah, it's sort of led by I guess the timings. We can shoot more in summer and daylight savings times because there are more weekdays available for shoots. But we operate out of a commercial space. We have 1 staff member. We also have another photographer that we contract to occasionally. And I think that's probably, like, for broad general business stuff, that's probably good enough context.
Yep.
So we're going to give you a rundown before we get into like the nitty gritty of books and start showing you our books and what we do. We're going to give you a bit of a rundown of our pricing model and our approach to shooting, because it's all very holistic and it's wrapped up with why albums work and why we're successful at selling books and albums. So yeah, do you want to get into that?
Yeah, let's get into that.
Right.
Did I just see a question come up from Kurt?
Yes. What's your turnaround time from shoot to viewing / ordering session?
It is probably 2 weeks, but
On average?
sometimes 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. It depends on...
We have very set timing in our diary, thanks to Katie's management skills, in that we know for the next month what our purchasing appointment times are. So everything's very regimentally structured in our business, so we're not working shit hours.
Yeah,
that's really important to us, that we manage our time really well. So for example, I had a session on Saturday and 2 on Sunday, and they both came in yesterday.
Yeah.
But that's like COVID related, that we're kind of a bit more flexible at the moment. But
yeah, we're doing less shoots at the moment, obviously, because we're just ramping back up again. But yeah, generally it's 1 to 2 weeks. If it's 3 weeks, it's usually because the client hasn't been able to fit into our schedule easily, so they've needed to wait a bit longer for the right appointment. We always aim to try and get them in within 2 weeks, because it's just a better, the work, we're very big on a very military workflow. It needs to sort of work in 300 shoots a year is a lot, and we take 12 weeks holiday as well, so we make sure that, you know, everything's flowing nicely, and we try and not have clients hold off for ages, or, you know, use our calendar as their kind of playtime so that we can stay on top of our workflow.
And clients fit into it. Like, we educate them from the very start. So as soon as we're on the phone with them, booking them in for their session, we don't book them in for their purchasing appointment, but we lay out the way that we do it, and they understand that before they even get to the session. So when you have the chat at the end of the session, they're like, cool, yeah, you mentioned Fridays are your day. That works for us. We can take some time out. So, you know, it's the education part at the start really works well in the way that we structure our time.
Yeah. So in terms of like shooting and then taking that shooting into a selling environment, our approach is a little different to a lot of photographers. What we do on a shoot is we do everything. We are both quite capable photographers, and there's not really much that we feel we can't do. There are things we're better at than other things. Like Jez is definitely more skilled at posing a large family in a really nice way than I am, and I am better at extracting really intimate and intense emotion out of a client. They're our strengths as individuals, but across a session, no matter who the family is, we can both shoot a really large collection of variety of portraits. Our approach is that if we show the client everything that they can possibly have, then they will choose their prints and artwork based on the photos they love the most and based on their emotional reaction to those photos, as opposed to other studios who may take more of a measured approach, where they might try and figure out what the client wants before the shoot and then shoot for that thing. Our approach is that most of the time the client doesn't know what they want before the shoot, and trying to make them decide that usually results in them going in a completely different direction. And although we might discuss, you know, their favourite piece of artwork that they saw on our website that they would really love, so that they've got an idea of budget and preparing themselves, we don't shoot for that. We shoot for everything, because the chances are they're going to come in and say, oh, I actually really wanted that, but now that I'm sitting in the room and I can see all the products and I can see my photos, now I want this. And that might be an album as opposed to artwork, or it might be a huge wall collection as opposed to an album. So by providing everything, we're opening up the options for that client to order whatever their heart's desire when they're in the emotional selling place, which means no pressure from us, and it means not too much decision making until that point.
Yeah, I think the key is that the client is so well educated before the purchasing appointment that they come in with no surprises.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing worse than, like, I did have a client yesterday who didn't read through her email from her shoot on the weekend.
Doesn't happen very often.
Doesn't happen very often. And she was a full paying client. Like, she found us on Google and booked us. And I was like, she knows everything. She didn't know anything, so I had to explain everything to her, which I actually was a bit flabbergasted by that she hadn't read the stuff.
But her daughter bought her the session as well, so maybe she just went, I'll just deal with that later. And,
yeah.
But it's very rare. So we want for the client to be able to go, here's a beautiful set of photos that will look amazing in this framed piece of wall art together as a collage. Here's another set that would be amazing in this book. Here's a couple of beautiful classic portraits that the grandparents are going to love. And also I'll take the rest because I love them too. So we want that to happen with every client. Obviously that doesn't happen with every client. We want that to happen with every client. By giving them the largest amount of possibilities possible, we can do that. So most of our collections will show they'll usually have between 50 and 80 on average photos from their session. But a lot of families have more than that. Like Jez showed one this week that was 150. Yeah.
But I spent 2 hours with those, and it was like a home study with those guys. So
it's a bit more. Yeah, if we do home sessions or rural sessions on farms and things, they tend to have more. And then sessions with maybe just a single mum and 2 kids would potentially have less, or a family with their first baby might have, 50 as opposed to 100.
Which is quite funny considering.
Yeah, we're about to show them that's not bad. But anyway, doesn't matter. It's just averages. And our model is to, in case you haven't figured it out yet, we do in-person sales. We sell the session up front with no further commitment required until you get to that sales session. So then it's basically order what you want and what you can afford. And then also order what you can't afford, because we do payment plans. So we've found over the time we've been in business, and I've obviously been in business 10 years. Jez has been running a photography business for way longer than that because he's really old.
Hey, no F words. I thought you were about the same age, actually, but yeah.
I'm just teasing him. He's 3 years older than me, and I don't let him forget. No, but he's been running a photography business for longer than me, and I think we've both learned over that time that clients often there's a type of shopper, and I think we can all relate to when you fall in love with a product and your budget can stretch bigger than what you initially decided, you'll make it stretch. And so we have an approach that if a client could say, perhaps if they thought their budget was $1,000, it's probably $2,000. And if they thought it was $3,000, well, it could be $5,000. It's just a matter of them finding the value in that thing, because we all overspend in certain areas of our lives. Like, it's just natural. It's just that that area is something that we can, there is a little bit of a buffer, and it's something that we see value in. And sometimes people don't see value in photography, true value, until they actually see the photos.
Or until they've experienced it for themselves personally.
Yeah. And then seeing the photos, and the photos are all that they wanted plus all that they couldn't even imagine beforehand. So now with our pricing approach, we have, our approach is not package based, it's incentive based. So we don't have sort of, bronze, silver, gold, platinum collections type thing. Nothing against that, by the way, because lots of photographers have extremely successful pricing models and they're all different to each other. But ours is more based around incentives, which are generally the best incentive is some sort of discount or digital files. So we kind of have both. We have discounts if you purchase a wall collection, so multiple framed pieces in a certain design that we've preconceived for you. And then we also have digital files available once you reach certain spends. So digital files, obviously people are obsessed with them these days. We have taken the obsession out of our conversations with people by not charging for digital files, by saying if you spend $1,500 or more, you will get matching digital files. And it works really well because people go, well, I still want them. Like, I get what you're saying, and I get that, you know, I'm paying for the product and I totally understand your approach, but I still want them. So they will often push themselves that little bit further in order to get those digital files. So that's how our pricing model's been for like 8 years.
Wow.
And it still works. We've made some tweaks to it over time, but it still works. If a client spends $2,900 or more with us, they get all the files. And so our average spend it hovers between $1,800 and $2,200, depending on the season, the year. It just varies. It's just before COVID hit, it was just over $2,000, wasn't it? It was $2,100, I think was our latest calculation. Most clients spend somewhere between $1,500 and $3,000. And that's because of our pricing and the way that it's been set up. We have 3 tiers of products. We have matted prints, we have framed prints, which are printed on cotton paper, and we have albums and books. And digital files are not necessarily considered a product, although they do have their own special page in our price list because, you know, people have to see the digital file page.
Yeah. But it does represent the least amount of value in our product range.
Light coming through the windows are really annoying, isn't it?
Mm.
Here it is.
Come closer.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, I think we've covered all of it. Cool. Just from the back end, we aim for a 12% cost of sale across all our products. So some of our products have slightly higher cost of sale and some have a lower one, like matted prints is, 3 or 4%, whereas some of our framed prints, especially the larger ones, might come close to 20%. But we work it out so that the average is 12% across everything, and that includes albums too. So it just is really great to have an average and to really keep your eye on it over time, because you might find that suddenly you change something and then this one particular thing starts selling more than what you expected, and that can actually shift your overall cost of sale across a financial year. So it's important to pay attention to that. So hopefully that's a good rundown about, gives you guys a really good background of kind of where we're coming from when we start to sort of talk about books and where they fit into everything.
Yep, thanks.
I just saw that come up. Cost of sale means profit. Cost of sale is in how much the product actually cost us. So the cost of that sale. So if a client spends $1,000 and our cost of sale is 10%, then that's $100 out of that $1,000 that we have to spend getting the product ready.
That doesn't include wages?
No, it's just the cost of the product. All the other stuff will come under overheads.
There's another question that just popped up then too. What's your cost of sale on albums?
So it varies as well. So we're going to show you shortly what our 3 album options are that we sell. And we can talk a bit more about that as well then. But with the 3 albums have very different cost of sale.
So very different outcomes in terms of.
Yeah, but we'll get to that. So hold that thought, and if I forget to mention it again later, then prompt me.
I'll remind you.
Yep. So I want to talk about why we love and sell books, because it's really funny, Libby, when you said the sleazy upsell. I don't think I've ever heard that before, but maybe that's because I'm not a wedding photographer, and I suspect it might be associated more with weddings.
Look, it does come more out of the wedding world, but I just think you're philosophically unaligned with that way of
totally, because I almost was a bit shocked when you said that, because what we would notice is that many clients will say, oh, albums, yeah, look, we've got a wedding album, we just never even look at it. And I always say, really? That's sad. You should pull it out. Your kids will love it. I think that if anything, what we notice with negativity around albums is that people think they're boring. they have a weird kind of negative sort of view of them just being like redundant, which, you know, sleazy, upsell, redundant, boring, I don't know, they're both kind of crappy attitudes, but I guess we see more of the redundant comments. My gut feeling about books is that people will love books and people will not be interested in books, and I actually don't believe that you can convince somebody who's not into them to buy one, and that's cool. It's kind of like the people that will never spend $1,000 on photos, you know, they just don't see the value in it, and that's totally fine, because hopefully the people that don't want a book will be happy to spend the same amount of money on a massive piece of art for their wall. And that's why it's great to have options in your business to sell.
I suspect part of the problem that people have, or the perception, is that, not to be negative, but I'm going to be, is that maybe their experience with that whole creation of the book wasn't a really emotive, connected one. So when people say that, I kind of think, but you haven't had an experience with us, so you don't know what our books are like. That doesn't make...
No, but sometimes they say it in the sales room, like when you're actually going through the photos, because they're looking around at all the wall art and they're like, I want that on my wall, and they're like, book.
But I also think that there's a perception that books are a precious, breakable thing that their children will ruin as well.
Yes.
So
I think that is
interesting.
Yeah. And also a book goes on a bookshelf and has to be taken off the bookshelf, which is personally, I think, is one of the magical things about it. But yeah, like I said before, I think there are just some people that are never going to be into books. And when you go into people's houses, I feel like, so I didn't write this on the notes there, but this was like a really key thing that we talked about the other day. When you go into people's houses, you can tell whether they're going to be into a book or not by the way, and maybe this is just us because we sell books, so we're switched onto it, but I would challenge people listening to this to pay attention to this too, because I think it's really interesting and very telling, is people that have objects, people that keep objects and are sentimental about objects tend to like books. So when you go into people's houses, it doesn't, like, I mean, you can see this right behind me, and this is not set up. This is just, we're in our lounge room and it's the best spot to do a webinar. But behind me is a shelf of photography books, including some of our personal albums. And on top of that are more books and a whole crap load of little found objects, which I collect. And that's just the type of person I am. And my parents are similar. They collect art. They have walls of books through their house. And they're not really people that put photos on walls because they like art, but they freaking love books. And I find that's the thing. Like sometimes when I go into people's houses and they have not a book anywhere, I think they're a little bit weird. And I'm sorry if anyone here is like that. I do think you're a little bit weird. Because books are so special. There's books that there are fiction books, there are books that teach you stuff, there are picture books, there are art books, and then there are your own books. And there's so much richness of like memories and information and experiences and emotions and stories and everything in books. And so people that just aren't into it and don't get it tend to be a certain type of person. And everybody else who is a bit sentimental and who has objects and sees meaning in objects and memories is potentially a good person to sell a book to.
And hey, I've got one comment to add to that. I had a conversation with one of our customers yesterday. To be fair, it was a consumer customer, so one of your clients. But he has just made 10 books during the coronavirus isolation period, which is, I love seeing the father being the kind of memory keeper, memory maker. But he said that they've already got in their family maybe 4 books already. And he said their girls, who are like under 10, they pull them out every month or every 6 weeks or so, and they look at them regularly. So I suppose what's interesting about what you've said is like you've commented on the parents' perspective. Maybe they find them boring, but I think as children and as you age, they will find it more fascinating possibly than the parents. So it's, not just them that need to be thought about.
Yeah, that's right. They're not making. It's funny. That's a conversation that happens in the sales room. In the decision-making room all the time. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about wall art or a book or even a collection of small matted prints. I think the key that a lot of people forget is that they're not making the decision for them.
Yes.
They're making the decision for their kids' futures in creating a reference point of who they were at this time with their family and their little tribe. And I think that's the beautiful thing about, like, we've been having lots of discussions about books in the last week just because of this, which has been amazing. And it's shifted my mind again into the realm of the importance of books, because of wall art, you can capture, 1 to 9 different images depending on the collection that you go for example, in a piece with us, which is really nice. Like, it gives the family a reference point, but it doesn't give you like a deeper story, a deeper connection story, like, the way that a child might touch his mum's face, or the way that they laugh at each other or pull faces at each other. And I think that's the beautiful thing about a book, is that you can dive deeper into the story and extrapolate all of those little moments into this beautiful thing that a child will grow up thinking that their whole childhood was not like this, because that's the only thing that they have left of that memory.
So you're telling the fuller story, not just one part of it. And the other thing that you've just made me think of is, and to be fair, we don't, of course, we're the album and book suppliers, but, we don't really care as long as people just print the damn photos so that they have a, physical, tangible copy for them and their children in years to come. But maybe, like, if we're thinking about their children, then if you just got wall art, then I don't know if the child would then take that on and...
Yeah, we were just talking about that exact thing. So we were trying to sort of disseminate what it is, what's the difference between having like a wall collection, because a lot of our clients, the vast majority of our clients, buy 3-piece wall collections of framed artwork. And we were talking about what's the difference between having that and then having this beautiful book. And the difference is that the wall art is almost like a piece of furniture. So it in terms of inheritance, well, we were trying to relate ourselves to this. We're thinking about ourselves, like, we're obviously, parents. We have 2 children, one who's 12 and one who's 2. And, in time, there's going to come a point where we're going to inherit some of our parents' things. And you think about, and I have many friends who've already lost their parents and have had to do the pack up the parents' house thing. And so, you think about what you would inherit. Like, if you take a book is a small object and it's easily keepable. It can be put in a box, it can be put on a shelf, and it gets kept forever. And it's a really valuable, rich piece of memory and history. Whereas a frame, well, that has to fit in a space. It might have a frame on it that doesn't suit that person's house. It's very unlikely that by the time that frame gets inherited, it's going to have like real value and be put somewhere. It's probably going to have the frame ripped off it, and maybe the print might be reframed if they're lucky and it's really beautiful and appropriate, or it may just get shoved in the garage somewhere. And it's sad but true. Like, the frame is more likely to be enjoyed over the lifespan of that family, which could be 20, 30, 40, 50 years, depending on how old they are. But the book could be passed on for multiple generations. And especially Momento Pro books, because they're printed on cotton paper and they're stitched. So they're not going to fall apart. They're not going to discolour. They actually are a piece of history, which, could last for hundreds of years if it's been looked after.
And that's why we chose some of those particular materials too, because we did want longevity. And I just wanted to recap and say, you just mentioned 3 really important things that define the difference, like the ability to tell a full narrative in a book, like the whole story. And then I think of like the permanence of the lifespan of that print product. In a print on a wall, like, people change decor and things around as they age. And so there's not as much permanence. But the other big thing is accessibility. So if you were to, let's say, have that up, you can still have the printed, the wall print, and then maybe it does get demoted at some stage further down the track, and you can still get it, but you have to go and maybe look in the garage or something, the attic or something. But the book is easily accessible and can move around with you too. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So the other thing, I guess Jeremy's touched on it, and we could just talk about it a little bit more, which is that when you have a collection of photographs, you've spent an hour with a family. Most portrait photographers shoot for about that long on a shoot. There are so many moments that can be captured in that hour, and to think that, one piece of wall art or even 3 pieces of wall art are actually going to represent that entire family is kind of doing a disservice to all the other moments. It's not it's not that they can't be beautiful, because they are. And like we've said a few times, we sell this all the time, and we believe in the power of it because we do create very artistic photographs. And we also believe in, seeing yourself on the wall and how great that is for children's self-esteem and all of that sort of stuff. But you're doing a disservice to all the other moments. And so many times in the sales room, we have families just go, oh, that's okay. No, I don't need that. That's fine. I'm happy with these ones. And it's sad, because what they're letting go of a lot of times are little subtle, beautiful moments, snuggles and kisses and holding hands and, or silly faces, tickle fights, just stupid fun moments that sometimes can actually capture the essence of a person in a way more powerful way even than a beautiful, stunning piece of art. And I'm not discrediting the beautiful, stunning piece of art, but they all have a place. And if we could have our way, we would sell a massive piece of wall art and a book to every single client. Because what does happen a lot is the clients end up upgrading and getting all their digital files because they want to keep their memories. But we also don't believe deep down inside that those digital files are the best way to keep those memories. The best way to keep those memories is in a printed book, because we all know that we have hundreds of thousands of digital files on our hard drives, and it's really hard to manage them, and you're probably never going to look at them again. So if you've got them printed in a book, then they're there forever. And, and even our 2-year-old picks up, he features in a few books now, and he picks them up and points to himself, and he doesn't really have the patience to sit there and listen to the story yet, but he sees himself and he points us out and he loves it. And I think any family really, if they had that experience of having an album and then watching their children's delight looking through this album, would be sold, but you can't actually convince a client of that up front. They have to understand you have to touch them on an emotional level, and they have to be attached to the idea of objects.
But I think if you haven't experienced it, like I relate myself to that story in that before I had Augie, there was Toby, and he's mine too, but he's not mine. So I didn't really have that relationship, and because I wasn't there for the first 4 years, I don't have that relationship with Augie with Toby like I do with Augie. And watching Augie pick up books and reference himself and reference himself within the family changes your perception as well. So I mean, we live our lives personally and professionally as kind of it's one thing really. So our business is an extension of us, and having watched Augie reference and relate to the books makes it easier for me to talk about the books in the sales room. Because I took over when Katie, was it end of 2017, Katie was finishing up in the studio, and she did all of the purchasing appointments. I didn't do any because
then I went, see ya, I'm off to have a baby. Good luck in the sales room.
So my experience was pretty low in the sales room. I did a few when I had my own studio in Sydney, but I didn't really love it. And I think the transition of going into that room, like now I love it. Like I love being in there, and I love talking about the photographs and the meanings behind photographs, and something parents might not see because they're living too much in the moment, to actually observe themselves outside and go, wow, that thing is kind of driving me a bit nuts now, but in 5 years' time, when I look at that, I'll be like, oh, I remember that thing that they used to do that was so cute or so annoying or so funny. And I'm relating to that with Augie, which is really cool. And it makes it so much easier to communicate that with parents and get them to connect with their photographs. And books make that so much better. Like I'm waffling. I'm sorry for waffling, but
no. Can I say I'm finding it particularly fascinating, and I hope you all out there are too, but you've just hit on something. I've actually written a blog post for our consumer customers that is totally relevant to what you've said. So I've looked at some, like there is scientific evidence and reports on how children who see themselves in print, in photographic prints with family, have an improved sense of well-being and identity. And
yes,
you've just kind of explained that in the way you see it with Augie, and just makes me think I should probably do a blog post on that for you guys, the pro people, because it's fascinating when it goes down to the scientific level.
Absolutely. Yeah, we do talk about that with our clients sometimes. I'm really quick to qualify and say, I'm not saying this to sound salesy, but I want you to know that it's actually been proven psychologically that this is what it does, and that it needs to be a family. It needs to be the family as well. It's not, this is what I often say when people are wanting just to put their kids on the wall. Oh, I don't really like the ones with me. Oh, let's just get the kids. And I'm like, yeah, but the kids are going to go, oh yeah, I was a cute kid. But if they see their family, then it's going to have an effect on them from the time that goes on the wall through their whole lives. It's going to help build their sense of belonging in the world. It's really, really important. And it's amazing to think that those studies have actually been done, because it's a really great thing to be able to tell people about when they're looking at purchasing photos.
Well, I will post about it so you have some reference point.
Yeah, cool. The one more thing I wanted to say is that another thing we haven't touched on with books, and why books are so great, is that a book doesn't just have to have photos in it. So it can have other stuff in it too. And that's where our really special books come into place. So we're going to talk you guys through a particular book we sell. We sell 3 books, but we're going to really focus on this one book because it is really unique. So I'm going to share screen and I'm going to show you guys our pricing page first. Host disabled attendee screen sharing. we should have
I'll let you in. Hold on.
Yeah, we should have discussed this earlier, Libby.
Start sharing. Okay, sorry, you can now share.
Right, awesome.
You can start sharing with someone else.
Okay, cool.
Did that work for you?
Yes, that is great. Okay.
I didn't actively do that. But
No, that's fine. It's probably a default setting when you do webinars, I would say. So we have 3 albums. We call them books as opposed to albums in terms of the way we talk to people about it. Mainly because I think albums kind of tend to have a bit of can have a bit of an old-fashioned connotation. So we prefer the book. It's a bit more modern. So we have 3 and they each have their own place in our price list and in our service. They're very different to each other. We're going to focus on the Heirloom Storybook, which is the one that is $3,895 for obvious reasons, because many people might think, how the hell do you sell an album that expensive? The reason we have 3 is because we feel that we want our clients to make choices based on what they like, not based on how much things are. So some studios might prefer to do an option where they might have one style of book, but they have different price tiers. So you can get 20 spreads, or you can get 50 spreads, or you can get 100 spreads, which is very much the way that wedding photographers often work. And we prefer everything to just be the way it is, the maximum number. This is the set amount of images. This is what it looks like, because we find that then the client can base their decision on what they love. And without thinking about price. Like if we offered the Heirloom Storybook in 3 sizes, I guarantee most people would buy the cheapest or the middle one, and no one would go for the top one. And then it would detract from the importance of that story. And one of the things I didn't like about selling wedding albums when I first started doing weddings was that it was so frustrating when a client wanted 20 spreads. Like I didn't do it myself that much, but I would help Jez out when we first merged our businesses with some of his Sydney clients. And I just felt like, oh, they're being cheapskates. Like, how are they going to get the whole story? Like, they have to cut out this whole chunk of action. It's better to, in my opinion, have the maximum number of spreads, and that is just what it costs, because to tell the story, you need that many photos. And that's the beauty of a book, is that you're telling a story. You're not trying to pare it back. So our album options are uniquely different. They're going to suit different tastes. Yes, the first 2 are quite close in price and they have roughly the same number of photos, but they're very different albums to each other. So people will choose them based on what their taste is. And then the Heirloom Storybook is its very own unique product, just totally different to the rest. And I touched on the fact that a book can have more than just photos, and that's what we do in this book. So it's a lot more than just a collection of photographs. And both of the first 2 albums come with matching files, but the Heirloom Storybook comes with the complete digital collection. So I'm going to...
Hang on. So I just wanted to add to that. One of the really cool things about the Heirloom Storybook, Katie touched on the fact that it comes with a few extra little bits and pieces, like some additional words and artwork if they wanted to, or some extra pictures that might have some significance to the family. But although the heirloom storybook is twice as much, roughly, as the other two, the value that represents is so much more than it being double the price of the other one. So the other ones only come with roughly 20. The heirloom storybook can be pretty much the entire collection if they want it to be. It can be anywhere from 80 to 130 photos, as well as other bits and pieces.
Try and get 130 to maybe like under 100, but
ideally
it's the whole.
So it can have five times as many photographs, as well as some other emotional bits and pieces that are connected with them, for only twice as much as what they pay for the other ones. So the other ones are actually, in terms of value, represents so much less value than what the heirloom storybook does. So I like that was a realization that I came to not long ago, and it's just changed my perception of the book, the heirloom storybook, so much compared to those other two. The other two are like easy out options for people who don't really want to invest in the whole collection. But this book here it's a totally different beast all to itself.
So it sounds like to me like the first two are like a record of the photo shoot.
A summarized record.
Yeah. Whereas the heirloom storybook is, as you say, it tells the whole story and you get a sense of personalities and emotions and
And then the name has evolved. So we renamed it the Heirloom Storybook maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. I can't remember now. It's gone through a few different iterations. I called it the Fine Art Storybook for ages. Heirloom is just so perfect. I can't believe I didn't come up with that before, because it's exactly what it is. Like it gives so much more weight and meaning to how we design these, because they are straight away, they understand that this is an heirloom. We're creating something for generations into the future. And the families that relate to this, they just get it. They get it straight away. So I'm just going to show you photos of different ones, and I thought it would be easy if I just did that while we're cracking on about this section. Do you reckon?
Great.
Okay, guys, there was one quick question from Liz, and I think you might touch on it later, but you could just give us a quick answer. Do you get an heirloom book out in 2 weeks?
No. No.
I didn't think so.
We don't get anything out in 2 weeks. I think the 2 week question was referring to the time from the session to the ordering appointment.
Oh, yeah.
So in terms of the turnaround time of products, it's usually 3 to 4 weeks after they pay for their order. And with the heirloom book, it's probably more like 8 to 10 weeks, but it really depends on the client, because, some people can just be a little bit slack. It's never us. Always.
That's in terms of giving us the material that they want to add to the book.
And or sometimes just approving the design as well, so that we can send it to print. But, if the client's really great, we could get an heirloom book out within sort of 6 to 8 weeks from when it's been paid for, because the turnaround time is, I think it's 4 weeks. Is it, Libby? These
for your books, yes, it's 4 weeks. Yeah.
So, whilst I'm showing the photos of these, I'm just going to talk a little bit about our sort of background of these books. So the idea of these books came from...
Are you expecting us to see now? So we're still on your screen, the PDF with the 3 books. Are you going...
Oh, so you can't see...
Oh, because you only shared...
You have to stop sharing.
Oh, I thought I shared the program. Okay, I'll stop sharing and I'll go back to... Oh, I thought I was sharing the whole of that program.
No.
Okay, bear with me.
That's my one niggle with Zoom, is it's just a bit clunky moving between...
There we go.
Programs.
Right. So now can you see?
Yes, now we can, thank you.
Okay, cool. So I've just got a collection of different books from various years that we've done, the ones that we've photographed, which is obviously not all of them, but it's some of the nice ones. So the idea of this book came from myself. It came from my heart and how I would want a book to be. And of course, when you hire a professional photographer, you're just hiring them to do one shoot. And so that's really different to a family putting together a year's worth of memories. So what I wanted to do was create a product that emulated a bit more of that, a bit more of the year's worth of memories or the significant place in their lives. So it wasn't just the snapshot of just this 1 hour of one day. And what did we work out the other day? That like It's like
On a
you
session.
capture about 2 seconds of life.
No, it's not even.
It's like insane.
A quarter of a second.
Yeah, so like all of the photos you take in a session, if you do the maths, it's just such a...
The shutter is only open for a quarter of a second.
It's teeny tiny.
Yeah.
So we want a book to be more significant than that. And the best way I could think of to do that was to put more into the book. So other types of content that is meaningful, that has been created by the client to give that book further significance and richness. So...
Oh, hold on. We seem to have lost Katie. Can you get it, Jeff? Okay.
And some have artwork.
Hey guys, just need to tell you that you actually froze for about half a minute there.
Oh, cool.
So
all right.
you got to the point of saying, I can't remember the point you got to, but could you just start that again?
Yes. Where was I up to photo-wise? Was I still sitting on the first photo? Or?
Still on the first photo.
Cool. So every single family will take a different approach to these books, and we encourage them to be as personal as possible. Some families will be really sentimental. Some can be a bit cheesy. Some might be super factual. Others may take more of a sort of creative approach, but they're all going to do their own thing. And the book is going to incorporate their thoughts, their feelings, their artwork, their memories, their relics that are relevant to that chapter of their lives, and the photographs that we've created. And they're all going to be put together into a book that tells the complete story of the family. So I would encourage them to write things if that was suitable, or they could use quotes. A lot of people love using quotes. It's definitely not my thing. I prefer to write, but that's just me. So every client's going to be different, and some people will just choose to add extra objects, like this client, for example. When we talk to them about I've got 2 pages. I've got one with handwriting. So this
I love that book.
Yeah, so this family, we did a newborn shoot. So it was 3 little boys, and these photos of the 2 older boys. And so each of the little boys was at their own stage, like that they're not all going to be able to do the same thing. So the oldest boy was just starting to write his name. So we used his name handwriting. And then this little one was only probably 2. And so after the shoot, and we decided we were doing a book, the clients actually brought in some favourite objects, and we photographed them in the studio and then inserted them into the book as well. I can't even remember what we had for the youngest one.
But it just reveals so much more about their personalities.
Yes. And they're the things that you maybe didn't have on the shoot. It's like extra context and extra richness and extra value. And remembering that after the shoot and, 50 years in the future, those children aren't going to know all of that stuff. So that is like extra special to have there in the context. Some of the ones from further back, so there's a few quotes in there, but like this one, for example, and quite a few families with school-age children do this, where they write a little paragraph about the child and where they're at. And I think that's really special too, because it's something that we would do for like kids' memory books. If you were that type of family and you were super organised, you might write something like this, but then it gets lost. Where does it go? Where does it get put? And to have it there next to their photos is just so special.
While you're flicking through those, Katie, I just wanted to mention in that book with the little boys, I always loved you had a page of the footprints. You did a ink.
Oh, the footprints. Yes, I forgot that was in there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought that was really beautiful too.
Yes, because there are things that don't get kept or they get like separated from other things. And so, in that, their chapter was they just had their 3rd child, and that was probably going to be their last child. And so they wanted to really represent like that particular point in time, which would have probably been maybe a 6-month period to a 12-month period of like no sleep and lots of craziness. And they wanted to remember it in this really special way. And so incorporating the footprints and then the handwriting and the little favourite objects, they're all things that would just be otherwise forgotten or separated into different things. Like, you know, a lot of those toys would just get chucked out. Who's going to remember how obsessed that kid was with Wheat Bix? You know, these things get forgotten so easily, and having them all there means that they're not going to be forgotten, and they're going to be preserved together as part of a story. So this one was one of those little craft things that kids do that obviously had significance to the mum. And the quote was, you know, it's just a quote and it's obviously something meaningful for her, but the fact that her son actually made this little love heart for her and brought it home for her from school or from daycare or whatever it was really special to her. And so what a beautiful opening for a book. And this one, I couldn't show too much of this because it's a very private album, but the dad in this session actually did a font. He didn't do the font for the book. He did the font for something else in his life, but it's his handwriting.
Yeah, right.
And so he'd had this font made. And so when we designed the book and they wrote letters to, so they had three children. And they wrote a letter to each individual child, but they also had a letter at the start to all of their children. And it was all done in that font. And this is one of my favourite ever, but very, very private family, so we can't show that, unfortunately, but it was so special. Yeah. They also created a piece of joint family artwork where they put all of their hands together and drew around them and then coloured in all the hands and wrote the date and the year on it and all their names. And we photographed that and put that as the opening page of their book. And so again, like, it's just so much richer in terms of memories and context for that family than just that collection of photographs that we took.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and then like these guys, the one at the very start, the place we call home, they had like a beautiful house which was built whenever it was, like 10 years earlier, and grown-up family. And grown-up families, these books are just as relevant. Sometimes they don't want to put the artwork and the cutesy things in there, but they can put their story in there. So these guys wrote a piece about their house and the context of their house, and that's on the front page. But they also had a beautiful watercolour artwork in their house, which someone had drawn of their house after it was built. And it was in a little frame. It was only small, like an A4 size drawing, or watercolor and pencil, I think it was. And so we took that and photographed it and then put that on the front page. And so because the session took place at their home and it was a really special, beautiful set of photographs that showed their gorgeous property, it just made sense that they did it like that. And I love the title of this book. It's so beautiful.
Did you choose that or did they choose?
No, they chose that. So we're like really talk to the client about, you know, what the options are and inspire them, and they're usually right on our wavelength, because otherwise they wouldn't have opted to buy it in the first place. So now the book, I might just jump back to...
Well, it sounds like the heirloom book is much more of a collaboration.
It is, yeah. Yeah, how do I go back to... there, stop share. Okay. Yeah, it is a collaboration. It's very much about us providing them with options, though. I think it's really... People need to visualise what they can do. And sometimes we get resistance to books because they might go, oh, yeah, but like, you know, my kids are like 16 and 17, they're not going to sit down and write that thing. And so we need to be able to show them that there are so many options that they can do. So we've got 2 samples in our studio, and we will show you those in a sec, that are very different to each other. So it really shows people the context of what they can do. It doesn't have to be cutesy. It doesn't have to have quotes. It can be really straightforward. It can have no words if you want. You know, it's totally up to you. I was also going to touch on the history of this book in terms of pricing. So it started at $2,500, and that was a little cheap. The cost of sale was quite high. I can't remember at the time what it was, but it was probably around 25%. And after I started selling them, which I was selling them in the early days to about 1 in 15 clients, I was like, far out, there's a lot of work in this. And some of them not as much, but some of them a lot. And so I put the price up to
I think the hardest part that you were really struggling with was the chasing and admin side of it.
Yeah, it was annoying. And I think we refined that over the years so that it was less hard for them. I can't really explain how we did that either. It was more just a kind of learning how to manage people better, I think. and not give them too many options as well. Like, try and make the decisions at the sales session so you know exactly what they're going to put together and get it from them quickly. And the pricing, we increased it to $2,900 after about a year, and that was then in line with sort of our top wall art package. So then it was, you know, do they want this or do they want that? It was a bit easier for them to then make the decision, and that brought the cost of sale down a little bit. But when I was talking before about cost of sale, you know, averaging out across products, if we're only selling the book to a small percentage of people, it's not going to affect our overall cost of sale as much. And sometimes there are pros and cons. Like, I did argue with myself a lot about it over the years, like, should I put the price up again? And eventually we did, obviously, but it was about wanting to do them, and it would just make my heart, just every time I did one, I'd be like, oh, I just love this. And the client would love it. And I felt like I was doing my bit for family history. Like, it felt really significant.
Totally.
So we did put the price up in 2016. I think we tracked back to see that we put it up to about $3,500 in 2016, and immediately we stopped selling as many of them, which is a bit sad. But I think, you know, then it was just putting them into that next bracket, and they were probably, a lot of clients were like, well, I want to get wall art as well, and I can't quite afford to do both. And it's just, you know, $3,500 is kind of above what the average client, or what most clients will spend. They mostly kind of spend between $1,500 and $3,000. And yes, we do get a lot of people who do spend more, but they tend to be like really showy clients who'll buy lots of wall art. So
I think it's also, like, I just want to add in a little caveat there that since I took over in the decision-making room, I hadn't sold an album, because they were Katie's. One of those books. Sorry, I had. It was Katie's baby. It's always been Katie's baby. So I kind of struggled with it a little bit, because it's like right at the upper echelon of our product guide. But when you asked us to speak about these, my vision on them started to shift. I sold one last week, by the way.
I heard.
It's the first one that he sold.
It's the first one that I've sold.
Yeah.
And do you think it was because you'd been doing all this thinking?
It made sense. Like, they were umming and ahhing about what to do, and I'm like, this is a no-brainer. Like, I knew it was a no-brainer. And I think the clients were kind of like, do we go this way or do we go that way? And I just knew in my heart that they really didn't have any other option, and it did represent the best value for them, because they're, like what Katie was explaining before, they're heirloom people, they're book people. It was the session was a wedding anniversary gift from the daughter to the parents, and we did the session in the parents' home, and, you know, there was a lot of emotional stuff that the family had been through together, and it was one of those sessions where I almost cried when I was showing them the photos.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I've become softer since we've had Augie. Like, Katie's the crier. Katie will cry when there's like an emotional pad on. But
sometimes you just have to say something in a certain tone of voice and not cry.
But my mind has shifted now, and I almost had another one yesterday. Well, I thought I did, and it made sense to me that was the best way for them to go. And one of the realizations is that value of the product now, and the value of that product for years to come, makes total sense, because I've been spruiking this in the sales appointment room for, I would say, a good year and a half, once I fell into my groove about the importance of people displaying imagery in one way or another for the reference point of their children's lives going forward. Like, you know, I had a viewing yesterday, and I had a little girl who, she was very full of personality, who kept poking me on the bum and chucking brown eyes at me and sticking her tongue out and running away. And I'm sure the parents were like beside themselves, thinking, what have we gotten ourselves into? But
social distancing.
No social distancing, unfortunately. But when I was explaining how awesome that was to the parents, they were kind of like, oh yeah, we hadn't really thought about that until you kind of pointed that out, in that this is who she is. And you know, there's no point trying to shift her away from who that personality is, because that's the point of what we're doing, right? Like, we're trying to capture a moment in time that best represents the family.
Totally. Oh, well, you've actually inspired quite a few questions here, guys, but because I've got the power, I'm going to ask mine first. I just wanted to say, I wonder if just with your sale from last week too, and even your thoughts about, you know, the books might have also partially been inspired by COVID and the coronavirus, because I think it's actually an interesting time for family portrait photographers, especially because people are now thinking more about what is the most meaningful thing in life. What does family mean? So possibly they will be more receptive to things like this, and maybe that was also what inspired you, Jez. I don't know. But now my other question's gone out, so I'm going to jump to Ruth's question here. She says, do you choose the 20 images during the sales session, and do they get any design reviews before you make the final purchase? I'm fascinated to know about that too, because I know that the design and the proofing and approving can be the most complicated, convoluted process, and your aim would be to shrink it. Just
so we'll get to that. We're going to take you through a brief rundown of how we do the heirloom books. The other books are a lot more basic and simple, so we can touch on that as well. But the heirloom book is basically going to contain the whole collection, so it's a little bit more involved.
Cool. And you've just reminded me of my other question. I just wanted to point out for those of you who aren't so familiar with our product range, that Katie and Jeremy have impeccable taste, and that the reason, like the books, the heirloom storybooks are printed on the cotton rag, the inkjet, I don't know, yours indigo printed? Indigo, yeah. Right.
No, inkjet.
So
the most expensive for us.
That's right, but it also is, it totally suits the purpose of what you're trying to do with the heirloom book.
Yes.
Because it is going to be the heirloom book, you've chosen the materials and the paper that have the longest lifespan. They are also, no surprises here, that they are also the most expensive materials. So you might be looking at the prices that these guys are showing, and I think it's totally reflective of the materials you're using and the time you're putting into it. You can make more cost-effective versions, you just with our other materials, but you won't get the longest lifespan possible out of it. Just wanted to point that out. Few questions, and you guys just remember them or answer them at whatever is most appropriate. Louise has asked, how do you explain to clients that you do not give them digital files after the shoot? Do they ever push for digital files? I think we'll leave that one till the end. Sure. We'll come back to that. And when you sell the heirloom storybook, this is a question from Anne, do you photograph the extra pieces after that, assuming it's at the ordering appointment? I have a feeling you're going to get to that in what you're about to present next.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple of extra points I want to add before we start showing stuff or showing more stuff, is that when we first started selling this book, that was the only thing we had. We didn't sell other books. We just sold the heirloom book. And the reason we ended up introducing other books was because we felt like sometimes people were on the fence, but they didn't want to spend $3,000. And so we introduced other books to give more people the option of having books. So we were kind of expanding, like the more people that buy a book, the better as far as I'm concerned. And if they are happy to spend $2,000, but not quite ready to spend 3, or as it is now 3,800 or 3,900, then great, because it's just more people who get books. And maybe the client who buys the $2,000 book in 2020 might come back in 2025 and buy the 3,800, which by that point might be 4,500.
I just want to say as well, with those other 2 options that we have, they are an alternate version, an alternate solution for people who aren't comfortable doing frames. And that's essentially the reason why we put those in there.
The other ones. Yeah.
So
but also they have a lower cost of sale as well. So it was also balancing those sorts of things too. Like, I think it's really cool if you can have an album on your price list, which is at a reasonably high price point, but has a really low cost of sale, because that's going to then potentially balance anything that you might have that has a lower one. I think at the moment the heirloom storybook is sitting closer to 12%, and that was part of my decision in putting that price up that last time, was like, just do it, just put it up. If less people buy it, that's cool. It's aspirational. There's always good to have something on your price list which is aspirational. What else was I going to say? So, okay, I think that's probably it for that. So why don't I then, we've got our 2 studio samples. These samples are at least 6 years old. Well, that one's obviously from 2014. This one might be from 2015. But they have lasted so well, Libby.
Oh.
They get handled a lot.
They get handled by 300-ish different clients.
Well, not entirely, because you don't always talk about them. Let's just remember that. But until I stepped out of the sales room at the start of 2017, what I would do in the sales room is I would put this book in every single client's hands and I would give them the spiel about it. And that's how I sold them, because I freaking love these books. This is my concept. These are my books. I came up with this idea. Please don't copy it, people who are watching. This is really my thing. It's made possible by everything that Libby said, that Momento is able to print saddle stitched on cotton rag paper, which means they last forever. They've got a linen cover, which feels amazing to touch. The paper feels amazing to touch. So I couldn't make these books without having that ability, without having Momento Pro. I don't think there's another company in the world that does this still. So
I'm not aware of them either.
When I would sit in the sales room, I'd say, now guys, listen, you may not be thinking about buying a book, but let me just show you this because I'm so proud of it. This is something really special that we do that no other studio in Australia does. And it's printed in Sydney by an amazing printer, Australian made, that no other printer in the world does. So you can buy this through us and nobody else. Let me just show it to you. So I would be excited, like genuinely excited about flicking through this book. And the beauty of someone being in front of you is that they can touch it. And I would say, touch it, feel the paper, isn't it nice? And look, it's section sewn like a proper book on your bookshelf. You guys probably don't realise, but some books are glued and side sewn, and that means they might fall apart or they might split or they're just not as nice to open because this one lies flat. Look at it, isn't it beautiful? And I would put it in their hands and I would say, and look how special it is that you can put other stuff in there, like little quotes and, beautiful little stories about the kids. Like this one's got, oh, look at that. It's got like little, and I would, I would just give this spiel to every single client. So they would see the possibility of how beautiful this album was. And sometimes they would stop me and go, oh, look, we really want to get wool art. And I'd go, but just have a look at it anyway, because isn't it nice? It doesn't matter if you don't buy it. But they would all be interested. And I would sell 1 in 15 clients this book because of it. And they probably didn't come in wanting to buy that book or think that they would buy that book. The other one that I have in there was a newborn one. And this one just has, the only thing that they've done is to our beautiful boy Angus on the front page, and then they've written him a letter. And that's it. And the rest of it is just photos. So that just shows the client that they don't have to have all that other stuff. It's not going to suit every single client. So it's good to have the two options because, you just don't know what people are going to be into. And having this one with the very simple, just the letter, is better for families like the one that Jez was talking about from last week, who were an older family, weren't going to sit there and collect kids' artwork and things like that. So it's a visual for them of how they might have a book like that. So the thing about selling books is that if you believe in the book, you can sell the book. I think our whole approach to selling is all just about actually helping the client find a solution as opposed to pushing them to buy something. And if you've shown them that and you've given them that as an option and you've put your heart and soul into it and you've talked through all the reasons why it's so great, then it's up to them. And it's just about, I guess, having a solution which is going to give them something that they can't do themselves as well. Yeah. So that's that. Do you want to?
I love the way you do that, Katie.
I would seriously get like quite intense, like with social distancing these days, probably wouldn't be as appropriate, but sometimes I would squish onto the couch next to them and kind of sidle up and go, like, have a look, feel the pages and talk. And I just, people would get caught up in the enthusiasm and they would accept it and be interested in it, even if it wasn't, what they were planning on.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how you go in the next few months too, Jez, because I feel from what you've said that you've thought more about what that book means.
Yeah,
Been reinvigorated.
Well, it's also changed something else in me in the way that I'm going to start approaching sessions as well, because sometimes you can get caught up in the mechanics of running a business and making money and being focused on making money, that you kind of step away from some of those, like that 10% peripheral stuff that can make that book something a little more extra special, which is really cool. Like the one that I was talking to yesterday, if I'd have just spent like 10% more time with her, maybe something might have shifted in her brain to go, that is an amazing solution. But I didn't capture that extra 10% for her. So not that I've been shortchanging clients at all. Like I just want to put that out there. I think, Katie always blasted me about shooting way too much on sessions, but
It does.
but I think some of those little more intricate moments that are really just that little bit deeper, I think will help with that as well. So
and actually, Jez, that is totally was going to be my next question, because you guys surprised me when I didn't know that you don't, like, it sounds like you're totally agnostic at the start, and you just say, we're shooting now, and then we'll have a sales session, and then we'll decide what kind of format you want it to end up in. And what interests me about that is that, the intention when you're shooting for a book can be sometimes very different to just single, artwork. Like you need the little kind of bits of visual punctuation and, different angles. And like, to me, a book is like a paper movie. And just like a movie has, intense moments and quiet moments and all the rest of it, you need kind of a variety in the imagery to keep them going. So do you guys just always have variety?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, it's just how we shoot, because it's a journey. Like a session is a journey. You go from beginning to end, and there are different moods that happen throughout that journey, and there are in-between moments, and then there are staged and directed moments.
Yeah.
And there are also surprising things, and that's part of spending time with the family. So our focus is always just on trying to capture who they are as in the best possible way that we can. So giving our all to that.
There's two things that I want to add to this. When we're talking to the clients, we'll always talk to the clients before the session. So we'll spend like 20 minutes on the phone doing a pre-session consultation, so we can kind of pull some information out of their brains in terms of personalities, connections.
Yeah, right.
And a couple of the other things that we ask on that are important shots that they want captured. Do they have an essence of location that they want to be captured in? Because some people are water-based, some people are forest, some people are deciduous, some people are natural, some people are brutal as concrete. Everyone has their own thing. Most people don't know what that thing is. They're like, well, I don't care, just choose a location, we'll be happy with it.
Yeah, wow.
But the very last question that we ask them is, do they have an idea of what they want to do with their photographs after the session when they come back and see them? Do they want prints? Do they want wall art? Do they want a book? Are they focused on digital files? And that kind of gives us an essence of what they're aiming for. But with that in mind, one of the things that I find super fascinating, and because I've been doing this for 25 years, the mechanics of taking photographs is not too challenging for me. The thing that I find the thrill in shooting is the social aspect and the connection and the way that people interrelate. So when we go to a session, I think we go in as neutral people without prejudice and try and melt into their story and capture who they are without enforcing us on them.
Yeah,
so every time a client comes in to see their collection, it's going to be completely different to the person before. Even if we've shot them in the same location, it'll be an essay or an examination of their connection and who they are. So we're the tool for bridging their memory to their futures. It's very esoteric, and sometimes I find myself overanalyzing that and giving that information to the client, but I think it gives them a resonance when they're making a decision about what photos are important to commemorate or immortalize that moment in time.
Chapter.
Yeah.
I think
so
very
we take their information on board. We've got a pretty good idea, but the social interaction thing, that's where I find it fascinating is, okay, they've come in preconceiving doing a frame, but now they've seen their collection. The book makes more sense, or something else makes more sense to them because they didn't really know what the session was going to be.
Yeah.
Or how they would feel about the session. Yeah.
I think that's a very beautiful thing that you can do for them. And I'd just like to say, because we get to see the other side of the world of photo books that come directly from customers and, you know, mums and dads themselves, I'm not in any way saying that they don't do beautiful work, but it's you guys as photographers and storytellers who can make their life look like, I don't know, fairy tale makes it sound perfect, but you can tell their story better than they can because you understand what moments to capture,
Yep.
what angles, and also how to bring it together and sequence it in a book that is engaging and beautiful and you know, will pull at their heartstrings.
Yep.
They take photos and they can sequence them in a book and they look, you know, that's a record, but it's not, it doesn't have the same emotional value that you can provide for them.
I've always said, Libby, that 9/10 of a good photograph is not what you see, but what you feel.
Exactly.
If you don't feel anything, what's the point, right?
Totally.
All right, let's
we're going to go through,
share screen.
yeah, we'll go through
select.
a few mechanics of how we approach.
Okay, so where is it? Why is that not there? Hang on, just bear with us a second. There's always going to be.
Told you, this is the fun part.
That's weird. Why is it not showing on? Maybe we just have to share the whole.
Yeah.
While Katie's doing that, Jez, there was a question a while back, a very short one. Do you do natural lighting in the studio?
Yes.
Oh, there it is. We do, yes.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we use Pro Select in case people are wondering what this is. Most portrait photographers will be familiar with it.
Yeah, we use a very old version, but it does the job.
Yeah, we're not huge believers on upgrading your software if you don't have to. So
yeah,
save money. Do you want to talk them through?
So yeah, we I do it slightly differently to Katie. So I'll put all of the photographs in the sad face folder, and then we'll start off by doing a slideshow with, you know, a song that's appropriate to the family. Hopefully one that they'll need a box of tissues to sop up the mess on their face. So once that's finished, we usually ask them what they thought, and then we'll ask them if they came in with some ideas of what they wanted to do with the photographs, and then walk them through the product guide and all the products. So usually people will come in with a pretty solid plan. We do pre-prepare our clients beforehand by telling them at the end of the session, now we're going to send you an email confirming date and time. It'll also have the product guide in there. So make sure you come in armed with an idea of what you think you want to do. It'll just make the decision process easier. So most people come in with a fairly solid idea of what they're going to do. Some people change in the purchasing appointment, and I'm totally down with that, because if they're locked in to an idea, then they're not malleable to the emotional aspect of making decisions. So
say they've already decided to do a book, and then maybe take the next one, conscious of time.
Yeah, cool.
I know people are going to want to see this.
With Jackie here, did she decide beforehand that she was going to do a book? Or
I can't remember. This is actually one we pulled out. I don't even know why we picked this one, but anyway, we love this one.
Yeah.
But it was this is from back in 2015 or 2016. And it was just a single mum with her son, and I don't know if she came into the appointment knowing that she wanted to do a book, but it was certainly very evident very quickly that she did.
There was lots of crying, I remember.
There was lots of crying. There was crying on the session. It was just...
So if they get to, when they get to the point of making the decision that that's what they're going to do in terms of the book, it makes the image selection a little bit easier, I would say, because what we need from them is their highlights, so that when Katie's putting the design together, she knows what photos to feature in the book. So ideally with...
By feature, we mean that's the full page.
The hero shot.
Yeah, I can't show that because it's on share screen. But so, for example, if you have a double page spread and you've got 4 photos on one side and 1 on the other, like the one is that I love that one has to be big.
Yeah.
So you're just basically getting the client to help decide which are their top favourites, so they can become the feature pages, and then the other ones can be fitted in around.
So it kind of goes in 2 phases. So we'll get them to choose the ones that they love and like, and we'll put those in a folder. So Jackie had, 82 photographs she chose as her top tier. So they're the ones that she wanted in the album. So once she'd chosen all the images that she wanted in the album, she then needed to choose which out of that 80 odd were her top 20 photos, because they'll be the ones that end up being the feature pieces. So then we'll move the other images into the middle folder. So they'll be the second bit players, and these will be the features. And then from there, Katie will take those decisions and start laying out a design.
The other thing to clarify too is that we don't have a set number of pages in these books, because it really varies depending on how many photos the client had in their session. And I've always been opposed to putting a set number of pages, because I don't want the client to feel like they have to get rid of something that they really love. And over time, I noticed that some books would cost us $600 to produce and others would cost $450, and it all balances out. So I decided to let that part go as far as cost goes, because it's an average and I want the client to be really happy with the content. So yeah, there's no set number of pages. I will encourage the client to cut out though duplicate photos, or if there's too many from the same sequence, it becomes repetitive in a book. You want each page to be fresh. So we'll encourage them to say, oh, look, there's about 12 in this set. We probably would only maybe feature 5 of them. So could we maybe look at which ones your favourites are?
Should we go over that?
So hang on, hang on, what else can we talk about with the decision? Oh, so what about what else you went through with those guys last week, like the things that you then talk about to get them ready, because that's part of the process.
Oh, right. And so with the guys that I saw on last week, in terms of putting the book together, they wanted to add a few extra things to it as well, because it was their wedding anniversary. So they decided that they would bring on board some of their wedding photographs, which I photographed yesterday for the book, and they were really cute. But they didn't want a lot in there. As sentimental as they are, they kind of weren't at the same time. It was really strange. Like they didn't want any, like there were some shots where the parents cried because they'd lost one of their children. And when they were reminiscing about that towards the end of the session, there were tears were flowing, and they didn't want any of those shots in the album. I think she has some pretty deep issues about that. So yeah, I think as sentimental as they were, they only had a dozen images that they wanted to add to the book.
Yeah, right.
And they've got to choose a title for the book. And
a colour cover.
Yeah.
So we, in the sales appointment, we try and make a lot of those decisions. So we try and say, okay, what are we going to include? When are you going to get that stuff to us? How's it going to look? Any additional words? And I often would follow up the appointment with an email, laying it all out.
Yeah, sure.
Especially if there were multiple pieces. So like with Jackie's, this one that we're showing now, she was like, oh my God, I've got art, because Oliver was 11, and it's just such a beautiful age for kids. Like they're creative, they've got objects, they've got things. So she said, oh, I'm already coming up with ideas. I've got this little drawing that he did of us recently, and then I've got this little thing that he made, and this is really special. I'll bring them all to you. I'll drop them off next week. And so that kind of prompted it to all come together. And then it's a matter of deciding on the title, deciding on the colour that might match the session. Sometimes those decisions are actually made at the appointment as well, which is great, because then you don't have to chase them.
Yeah.
And then you create a timeline for producing it. So the first step is to obviously get all of the other content ready, and then the design process will start from there.
And guys, do you kind of give them, like, are we talking like a 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week time frame or goalpost? What do you kind of suggest?
I don't think we really say. It's more like the quicker you get it to us, the quicker we can start.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys that Jez just sold the album to last week, they dropped it off yesterday. Or the day before, so they were on it. And I remember Jackie being really on it too. Most people are actually quite on it because they're super excited to get it happening. So yeah, but some people are a bit slack, and you kind of can tell who's going to be slack. So in terms of the process, then the workflow. Now I'm an ex-graphic designer, so I'll just start this by saying that I'm super comfortable with laying out things, like really quick and comfortable. It's not an issue for me. So my approach to design is very free flow. It's organic. It's not systematized, but I think that it's something that anyone could emulate in any program. It's kind of what I like to do is undercomplicate the process and use my intuition and my knowledge of the shoot, my understanding of that family to design the album. So I don't do much planning. I know I've seen some people, and actually Jez used to do it when we first met, and I was like, whoa, man, that's like a whole extra level of work, where he would plan a wedding album like with a pencil and paper. kind of looking at some of the layouts, and I'm just like, I can see why he did that, and I can see why some people might choose to do that, but it's an extra layer of work, and I'm all about making things quick and easy. And if you use your intuition to design, I find that it actually works really well. So I'm gonna, so are you in?
Katie, on that note, I just want to say I speak to a lot of photographers who are not confident about designing albums and books, and I just want to reiterate that your visual literacy and understanding is far, far greater than most people, because you're always dealing with composition in a frame. It doesn't necessarily always convert to design across a double page spread, but I think there are tools like Smart Albums and Fundy that make this process so much easier now. You have a background and understanding and all of that, so I can totally understand your confidence and also the reason why you use InDesign. But for people who aren't so confident, you know, just be assured that your ability to design is much better than 90% of the population and
totally
your clients, and there are tools that make it easy.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to share, what do I have to do now? I have to share it right across the whole computer.
Just share the whole thing, yeah.
So is that one? Is that?
Yep.
Is that what I share? Cool. Okay. All right. So what I do is I hang on. Where's my binder?
Katie, are you thinking we're looking at the book, The Place We Call Home now?
No, we're not. No, that's just in the background. So what I'm going to do is show like a quick demo of how I go through the design process. And I'm going to use Jackie's book, the one that we just showed in Pro Select, that I did back in 2015. So there's a bit of a process. I would first take all of the images. So I would go into Lightroom and I would tag all of the images that she picked as going in the book first. And then I would export them from there. And I'm not going to show you Lightroom because this is a really old, it's in an old catalogue, so it wasn't easy for us to do that. But I'm going to show you InDesign, and I'm going to just cheat a little bit with Bridge. So imagine that Bridge, which hopefully you can see now, would be the Lightroom catalogue. And I use this as a reference point for my design. And what I would do is I would flag. People have different ways of tagging things in Lightroom, but when we're picking photos that are going into production for an order, we use the is it the flag? You press P, so it's pick, and it puts a little flag on the photos, and we do that with all the photos that they've chosen for their order. So whether it's a book or whether it's a framed print or whatever it might be that we have to actually export and produce for them, they get flagged. So I would go through and I would flag. And if we go back to what we showed you in Pro Select, Jackie had picked about 80 something photos, and I would flag all of those in Lightroom, and then I would export them, and I export them in the Adobe RGB color space, because that's the color space that Momento uses for their printing. And it's the same color space we shoot in. So obviously it's got the most amount of color and detail. And then I would export them into a folder, and I would set up like a little folder. It would be within the client's directory, and it would be called book or whatever. I've just created this dummy folder for you guys here. So all my images would be exported in this folder here. Hopefully you guys can all see that. So I'd export all the images. Some of them have been retouched. They've got the edit in the file name there. Some of them haven't. And then all the additional content, which Jackie dropped off and we photographed, would all be put in its own little extra folder. So everything's all contained within the one directory. And then what I do is I grab a template. So because I work in InDesign, I like to have a template, and the template just has dummy photos in it, and then I design off this dummy. Now, the reason I do this, and this is only probably relevant for people who use InDesign or are interested in design, is that I find it so much easier to place photos on top of other photos in this program, and I like to be able to see what the layouts look like. So for those of you who aren't familiar with InDesign, don't worry too much about what I'm about to show you, but it does show you how quick and easy it is to lay out an album. If you are familiar with InDesign, you probably understand what you're seeing right now, which is basically the pages, potential pages in an album that just have some dummy photos in them. And over here on the right, I like to use the pages panel, because what this allows me to do is see all the pages in the album, add more pages, and also rearrange the pages so I can move them up and down in the spread. So this is like a really great little tool in design that I started using much more after I started designing albums, actually, because it just allows you to see the whole album in one go rather than scrolling up and down the page, which is a bit more clunky. What I would do when I open up my template, and bearing in mind too that my template is really simple. So you can see there's only 5 layouts here. Now, these layouts can be rearranged. Like I could put this page next to that page or vice versa. They're not designed to necessarily be sitting exactly like they are right now, but they're based on a really simple grid system of groups of 2 or 4 photos or 3 photos or full page bleeds. And I'm just going to use the client's directory to organically work out what the album's going to look like. The first thing I would do is start adding pages to my design. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's get back down. There. No, not there. Let's add one more. Now I've really stuffed it. Don't you love doing things on the fly? So what I do is I create extra blank pages. If you hit the W key in InDesign, it's a really great hotkey for turning on and off grid lines and things like that. It's good to work with them all turned on just to get positioning right. So what I do is I would go, okay, going over to Bridge. What are my first sets of photos? All right, cool. I'm looking at these beautiful little interactive moments. I've got over to the left that you guys can't see, I would have my Pro Select album available to me. Usually it's on the laptop because that's how we work. And I can then see what Jackie's favourites are. So I know that this first photo that's highlighted is her favourite photo out of this little set here. So what I'm going to do is use those first 4 photos to create my first layout, using that one as the full page bleed, which would probably end up looking something like this spread here. So if I go to that spread, which is there, and I copy and paste those into my first page. And the reason I copy and paste it rather than using it is because I just want to keep it available for all my other spreads. And then I would go to place, and hopefully it's going to, no, it's not going to come up. Where's it going to come up? Images, is that going to be here? Yes, good. So then I would take my first 4 photos and I would just go, so you hold down the Option key and it will place it, if anyone doesn't know that. And I would literally, the good thing about InDesign is it shows you the next photo. So if I've chosen to place 4 photos, it shows me the next one after I've just placed the first one. I don't know if Fundy or Smart Albums do things like this, but I find it a really cool little feature. So I can go, cool, that one can just go there. And then I've got, okay, horizontal one, let's go there and there. And like, you might think, oh, I knew what this was going to look like, so I've just done it like that. And yes, I did know what it was going to look like, but this is how I design. So if I go into the next set, I can see, I know that Jackie loved this one of Oliver holding Bicky. And so I'm going to make that one be a full page. And then I've got these other 2 next to it, which are quite similar, but they're portrait photos. So I would then go, let's find a spread where I can do that. It's probably this one. So let's take those photos, place them here, move them over, and then I'll put the next 3 in. No, I'm not going to do this with the whole album, by the way, because I think it's just a really simple illustration as is. So I've got a portrait photo. Hopefully you guys can all see that. So I'm going to place that there, and then another one similar, and then I've got the big one. Now I wouldn't toggle my W so that I can see everything as it would look printed. I wouldn't make this one a full page bleed because I had the one on the previous page as a full page bleed. So I would keep this one, you know, a slightly different format on the page with white around it, just because I like to break up the design throughout the book so the pages don't look too similar. And over on this side, these 2 photos are being chopped off a little bit, so I'm just going to fiddle around until I get the right crop for those, and then I move on. So this is my process for designing the whole album. I just keep these templated pages sitting there at the bottom of the spread, and at the end I can delete them, and I just use them to basically give me a visual. So when I get to,
I was going to say, that's pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Does anyone do you want me to go further, Libby, or do you think that's...
Oh, look, I think what you've actually talked through, what's important there, I suppose for people who aren't familiar with Smart Albums and Fundy, they do the same thing. Basically what Katie's done with her, because you're so skilled at your graphic design, you've created your own templates that you know how to use and fill and swap things around. And that's exactly what Smart Albums and Fundy made really easy in their software. Yeah. So, you know, what Katie just applied here, you know, done here applies in those programs. I think the important things, you know, what you said was things like, you know, you've got your hero shots and they can fill a page and then have a bit of variety between a full page bleed to edge, and then the next page, as you say, has got a little bit more white space, because you've got to create, you need design consistency across a number of pages. You need a little bit of repetition, but not so much that you get bored by it. And when you're including like multiple photos that are shot in the same kind of style, like you've just got to be thoughtful about how many you choose and how big they appear in comparison, because you just don't want it to look all same, which is why I was so fascinated. You know, when we were talking about shooting for a book does require more visual punctuation and different angles and things like that, but you guys naturally do that in the way you shoot.
You can see with this session, I mean, 83 photos here. There's an accidental one at the end that shouldn't be there. But there's a lot of variety in those 83 photos, even though there was only 2 people plus a dog in the whole session.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are beautiful, quiet, you know, special moments like this one. And then there are like, you know, artistic, you know, black and whites, and then there are action shots. And one of Jackie's favourite sequences from the whole thing were these ones where they were just mucking around together. They were playing footy for a while, and then they just started mucking around together. And so we got these crazy ones, and this one, which is one of my favourites. Yeah. Oliver is now 16. And he's like nearly 6 foot, and Jackie's my height. And so, you know, like, I just know she looks back on these. We photographed them again since, and I know she looks back on these and just goes, oh my God, I'm so glad I did this when he was still little, and she could pick him up. So moments like this in a book are really special, like this one here where she's actually picked him up. And I remember her afterwards going, oh my God, you're so heavy. But like now there's no way she could pick him up. So really special. And the little mementos that we put into the book were they just set it off so perfectly. They were just beautiful. I'll see if I can show a couple of them up a bit bigger here.
I wonder what Oliver would think of the book now at 16. That'd be kind of fascinating.
Yeah, actually I haven't asked, but he's a typical teenager. Like, he's not very...
And maybe now is not the time to ask.
Probably not. But yeah, this was my favourite one that went in the book. It was just so cute. He's drawn her as a queen, and he's a knight, and it's so beautiful. I think probably it's hard for a 16-year-old to really appreciate this sort of thing, but as he gets older, he sure will. And this beautiful chapter, and you know, she's no longer a single mum, and he has 2 stepbrothers now, but like, so it's a different life for him, but this is always going to be this treasured memento that he can keep forever and pass on to his children eventually if he has them. So yeah, really special. But I think that's probably enough then that I need to sort of show. My really main point with all of that showing this is that the process can be really organic. It doesn't have to be planned. I find that things have a way of just falling into place when I'm designing. And when software works well, which I'm sure Fundy and Smart Albums does as well, is where you can just very, very quickly rearrange something.
Yeah.
You get the photos in, and sometimes you have a block, you know, you might go, oh, I just can't make this photo work in here. And it might just be a case of just removing something else. And the beauty of our process is that we haven't set in stone exactly what is going to be used and what isn't. We've got their favourites, we've got their other ones that are going in there, and then after that we've got the license, and we say to the client, we'll send you a PDF in about, well, within a week or 2 of receiving all of the stuff and having it ready, we'll send you a PDF. You can approve the design, and then we'll go to print. So it just gives them an opportunity to go, oh, I just don't know if now that I see it, wouldn't mind swapping that one around with that one. 9 times out of 10, nobody changes anything.
Oh, really?
Like, they're just really happy with it, and it just goes to print. Every now and then you get someone who's a bit picky, but it's like, it's really not an issue very often at all. So,
and I think charge them for edits at all?
No. because they just don't really happen. I think what part of this is our approach to making sure these processes work is the same as our approach towards everything in our business. We make sure we've educated the client and set them up for that expectation. So by saying to someone, you get one round of edits, you're like, it's like mentioning chocolate when you're trying to get your kids to not think about what's for dessert. Like you just, as soon as you say it, they're like, oh, okay. And then it becomes like a monetary or a time thing. Instead, you've said, now we're going to take control of the design. You can trust us because we have a background in this. We know what we're doing. We love doing these. All you guys have to do is choose your favorites and then leave the rest up to us. And if you need to change something, that's fine. You just let us know when you see the proof. Most people don't change anything because they love it. Like you've got to add that.
And I think what's important there is you've made it clear and you're acting like you're the creative directors as well. Like some people who are less confident think, oh, maybe they should decide. And yes, you've got to make your customer feel like they're involved in what's going into the book, but that's why you get them to create that list of their top 20 favorites. But I still think it's really important that you guys as the photographers, designers, have the control over the final design, because I know we did an experiment with, it was with a wedding album, but we already had the wedding album from the photographers, the full design. And then I said, can you do me a favor? I want to see what the client would do, the end client, the husband and wife would do if they got to choose the photos and design the layout, because I know what I see from our consumer service that I can pretty much guarantee they won't do the images and the day the justice that a photographer will. So the end client in the end did a very good job, but they were in marketing. They understood visuals. They understood white space, less is more. All I wanted to kind of confirm by saying this is that you guys should feel like you're the creative directors as well, and not leave too much to deciding, because not only will you'll kind of extend the design time potentially to, you know, something that makes it just unmanageable. And that's why I was asking you guys about, do you give them a deadline? Like, you know, maybe it might be helpful in some cases to say, you know, can you get back to us in 2 weeks with this kind of content so that we know that we can make the book in this time frame? And if they do have many edits, like the more...
It's like making any decisions. If you don't set the parameters... You've
got to set the parameters.
If there's no parameters, then the client will take liberties and just extend it. Like when people come in to make decisions about their photographs, we give them an hour-and-a-half window and they have to make the decisions.
Okay.
There's no coming back again or none of that. All decisions are final. They're all made on the spot.
But we don't... The thing is, I don't like to say the negative thing, because you put it in their mind. So you just say what it is. So you say, so you're going to drop these off this week. Yeah. Great. That means we can get started on the design by Friday. So we should have a PDF back to you next week. Like you don't say, now, if you don't drop off that by Friday, then we'll chase you up next week. And, you know, it's the same with, we don't say to people, now, if you don't make your decisions today in the appointment, there'll be a $200 charge to come back for another. We don't say that. We just say, make sure you're prepared to make your decisions in the appointment because that's the time we've given to you. Like you just don't say the negative.
Give it a positive spin.
Yeah, and I think for that reason you have less people, you know, less people getting it wrong or taking advantage if you don't.
You've made the statement. That's what makes all the difference. You've made the statement.
Yeah. So, and like I said, very rarely do they want to change anything. They're just so stoked. And I think it's really important for us as photographers to put ourselves forward as the experts. We are, as business owners, not just photographers. We are business owners. We are designers. We are advisors. We are, you know, we're also printers. You know, we understand decor. Like we choose things for people's homes. Like it's important, if that's part of your business, that you put yourself forward as an expert in all of those areas so that you can assure your client that they're in safe hands and you can help them make those decisions. If you leave it all up to them, then you may as well just send them a gallery and let them do their own thing.
Yeah, and it may never get done.
Yeah.
And hey, Katie, and for everyone out there, I just want to add, there is, just in relation to InDesign as a design tool, because I'm sure you know, but just to reiterate, we have multiple design tool options. You'll notice that I haven't really mentioned Momento Pro software much, but that's because I think for you guys who are creating albums and books regularly, then tools like Smart Albums and Fundy and InDesign, if that's, you know, your skill level, then they are actually more efficient. at doing the designs and keeping your workflow moving. But I just wanted to say, in relation to InDesign, we have an InDesign plugin that you need to download that
Yes,
gives.
actually, I was going to show that, but it's no matter. Like you can actually create a template using that plugin, so that then you can, you know, if you do the same designs or the same album format all the time, it's really easy. The InDesign, the Momento plugin is just really great for making sure that your pages are set up for the book that you're doing, and then exported in the right space as well. So it's just added an extra layer of simplicity to the process for us, because we used to do it before the plugin as well, but it was just a bit, it was a little, no, I wouldn't say it's more complicated, it was just a little bit less like, and off you go, my pretty flyaway, and let's hope that it's all okay. And of course it always is okay, but like now you have that extra assurance that it's all set up perfectly the way that it needs to be. And then when you upload your design, the Momento ordering thing takes you through, and it knows what that project is as well.
It's better for all of us.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking now that, do you feel like you presented what you were?
Yeah. But let me just share one more thing, because we put together, you guys can screenshot this. We just put together a quick 5 top tips. If anyone feels like, you know, they might want some takeaways and hasn't written notes, which, you know, we don't really do on webinars very often. These are just our 5 top tips, and they're mostly things that they're all things that we've touched on in various ways, but they're just, you know, the top sort of, tips for selling books within your business that we've learned over the years. So yeah, that's it, Libby. So if there's questions, I know we're running short on time now, but like we don't have to go. So if people have questions and they're able to hang around, please do, because we're happy to go through more questions.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you for all of that explanation. And I think that your clients are very lucky, because you can tell that you care about the end product that you're providing them is something that they can enjoy, and their, you know, other generations can enjoy. But it's, you know, you can tell you put your heart and your soul into it, both of you. So lucky clients you have. So we have a question here from Louise, who's asking, still a bit serious people to push for just digital. Oh, okay. Interesting. So Louise is asking, she's still just a bit curious if people do push just for digital files. And I imagine that a lot of photographers get that question. How do you deal with that?
Well, they can, if they want to buy just digital files, they can. It still comes with a set of 25x7s, but it represents the least value in our product guide.
Yeah. The thing is, it depends on back to you, Louise, like whether you're talking about in the initial inquiry process or whether it's in the sales process. Because if it's in the initial inquiry process and they're pushing for digital files, there's a very good chance they're not our client, and they're going to go book a $200 shoot and burn photographer, which obviously we're not. And that's cool. They can go give those people some work, no problems. You can't necessarily convince every person that they're, you know, that you're the right photographer for them, because you may not be. But if it happens later in the process, like in the sales room, that's cool. We've got options. People have many options to do all sorts of different things with us. It's just that often they get into the room and realise that the value lies in the product. So they can see them in front of them, they can touch the books, they can see their beautiful photos, and then it all makes sense to them, and they'll choose what they want to purchase at that point. So
but we explain to them that what's the best way? Wall art and...
We say we're a solutions-based studio. We say to a lot of people on the phone when they ask about digital files, I sometimes say, why do you want digital files? Just out of curiosity. Oh, just because, you know, I want to keep them. And I'm like, well, what do you make, photo books? And like, I mean, you can't do this with every client. There's no formula for the conversation. But like, if you ask questions like that, they go, oh no, I just want them. And we say, well, listen, the thing is, we've been doing this for a really long time, and we've sold digital files, and then we've had those clients come back to our studio, and we've asked them, oh, what did you do with your photos last time? Did you make a book? And they go, oh no, they're still on the USB, or they're still on the CD. Like, that's going back that far. And then, you know, you go, well, and you can use that as an example to say to people, listen, that's what we all do. We do it. Photographers do it. We all do it. So when you hire a professional photographer, if that photographer offers art services, that's so much more valuable than if they don't. because you can get a whole thing done. You can walk home with a finished piece of wall art or a finished album, and you don't have to do the work. So we use words like, we help you find a solution. We make something tangible for you that you can enjoy every day, and there's no more work to be done. And that often it convinces people. And if they're going from asking for digital files because they didn't know why they wanted them, because Joe Blow down the street got them, because last time they did a newborn shoot it was $200 and they got the files, and you know, you question them a little bit about it and they go, yeah, okay.
And I guess, and the other thing, a really cool thing just quickly, is that if you ask them if they've had a session done before, what did they get? What have you done with those photos? Like if they just USB last time, oh, they're still sitting on a USB. Oh, you haven't, they're not on your walls? Oh, no, I didn't love them enough.
Yeah, that happens too. But sometimes they just go, oh, I keep meaning to, and I just never got around to it. And now it seems silly because I've had another baby.
Yes.
And you're like, well, this is exactly why we sell wall art and albums. Like, it just, you know, we've been doing this a long time. And so we've gotten used to like fielding these questions, and they'll still come. They still come all the time. But it's like water off a duck's back these days. And if you can actually have a conversation with people about it, you realize that they're only asking that because there's an expectation and they just don't know what else to ask.
I want to add into that too. Like, we keep our eye on a few kind of mainly mummy Facebook groups of people talking about, you know, sometimes a question will come up, what should I do with my photos? And it is fascinating to watch the comments that crop up there about people. I haven't printed my wedding photos like 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Like and all of them are like, yeah, I never got to it yet. So we always thought that because we can see the consumer side of the photo printing or photo book printing side of the equation and the professional photographer, you know, when everyone became obsessed with digital files in the last few years, we thought we'd see, we'd see the reduction in the albums being printed by professional photographers and a natural increase in books being printed by consumers because they were going to print them. Never happened.
Yeah.
And I can honestly believe if you went back to past digital only clients from even 5, 10 years ago and you said to them, have you printed yet? The majority will have not printed them. They probably couldn't even find them. If they were on a CD-ROM, well, they don't have a computer to access it unless they've got nerd in the family. You know, they don't even know how to access them. So my way of thinking is if you truly want to guarantee that your job of capturing the photos and giving them to the client, if you want to guarantee that they can access them in more than 10 years, you've got to give them a print.
Yep, 100%.
So,
and just in my first 2 years in business, when I did just sell digital packages on CD at the time, which I think maybe went to DVD maybe the following year, that was where I learnt, because I had a couple of those clients come back after 2 years, and that's exactly so I'm not lying when I say to clients that I tell that story, because it's exactly what happened. And it's exactly why I went to a product-based model, because I just thought it was so bloody sad. And I didn't, in my first couple of years of business, I didn't really consider the long-term picture. You know, I thought about having photos, and I had heaps of digital files and I printed some of them, but my clients weren't printing them. So, you know, that's exactly what shifted me and made me go, well, if I'm going to start selling product, I better come up with some good ones that are going to be the right thing for my clients, because this is sad. And they would be disappointed when they told me. They'd almost be feeling guilty. Like, you know, I wasn't cross with them. I felt bad for them because I know how hard it is when it builds up and you never get it done because it takes time, and nobody has bloody time. No one has time. People are way busier now than they were 10 years ago. So
and proof of that too is that for us as Momento, you know, consumer selling our consumer books, we've always known that the biggest obstacle is time. And because there's a natural progression, like if you're a wedding photographer, then yes, stereotypically there's probably a baby that's about to, pop out in the next few years, and then people get, there's just not enough time. So COVID has been amazing for us.
And how, isn't that extraordinary that, you know, our days are filled with socializing, kids' sport, work, you know, running to the shops, waste of time, trips to the mall, like all these things fill our days, you know, when we have days off, and they stop us from doing things like photo books and albums. And then suddenly we've all been given, 8 weeks. Well, not everybody. A lot of people are still going to work, but a lot of people were given time off work as well as weekends with nothing to do, and they're all producing photo books, which is amazing. And it's so good for you guys and for anyone who provides consumer printing services. But it just goes to show how it takes a world pandemic to give people time to catch up on something like that. Because otherwise they just don't have it.
And totally agree. And then the messages that we get back from people are so beautiful. Like one woman last week who said she'd been, this is just showing you the value of memories in print. She has been working on a family history for 4 years. In the first week of COVID, her husband ended up in hospital. They had another grandchild, and then a sister had a milestone birthday. And she kind of, like, the culmination of everything made her go, oh my God, I've got to get this family history finished and in print, because what happens if the stories never get told, they never get seen? And that actually inspired her to, she said she spent a week of 3 a.m. mornings getting it all done.
Wow.
But then she wrote this beautiful, she wrote a beautiful email to thank us. And I think the last comment she made was something about, looking at your memories nourishes the soul. And I just thought, that's so sweet. That's exactly why we, started Momento. So people could have their memories, but if they remain digital. And once again, I don't care if you print them in our books and albums, but bloody print them somehow, or get your clients to print them, because they're not going to be around in a few decades' time.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't mean to lower the tone there, but does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask? I know we're about 12:30, but just in case, maybe I should unmute everyone, or you can just pop it in she says, hoping she can find the unmute button. Can you just pop it in the chat window and I'll ask the question? Because we've still got quite a few people around. We've had some people saying, excellent, thanks. A few thank yous as people have exited, guys. Thank you for sharing. So generous with your time and sharing. I totally agree. What else have we got?
We're like a book.
Yeah, an open book.
Yes. An open saddle stitched cotton rag.
Yes.
We feel nice.
They loved the heirloom books. I've got a question, which might be the last one, I think, but can you just remind me, did you guys say, do you show any photos to your clients before that sales meeting?
No. Oh, unless we're up to date with social media, or at that crucial new social media schedule time, and a couple might have snuck in a sneak peek on Instagram or Facebook just before their appointment. But it doesn't happen to very many clients, because we shoot, if we're shooting 40 clients in a month, and we usually try and schedule our social media posts about a 4-week sort of block.
Yep.
There's usually only a tiny number that might see something beforehand.
So occasionally I'll show someone on the back of the screen.
Oh yeah, we might show them on the back of the camera, during the session, just to be like, check this out, you're gonna love this.
Yeah, but what you've just proved to me too, and by doing that, by holding the images back until they're in print, means that it proves the value of the print too, and you're building up. It's like a climax rather than letting it all go on digital or sending them in advance.
Yeah.
It all helps build it up. But you've got some lovely comments here, guys. Thanks, guys. Educating clients is key, and you guys do it well.
Thanks,
Love
Jo.
this, and your emotion really shines through.
Oh,
So look,
thanks, Jo.
on that note, unless anybody has anything else to add, I'll just add in that don't forget, you can get 5 studio display albums or products a year with us at 40% off. And that's because, like you said, Katie, you shove the book in their hands, and once they touch and feel things, and Jez, I know you do too, you'll be doing more of that.
I'm gonna start doing it now.
Yeah. But, people, there is something about the tangible nature and people being able to see things. And I think it's interesting, you showed us the 2 examples of the books, the one that had more of the kind of, additional ephemera and elements in it, and then the plain one, show variety in sizes and in content. And sorry,
got that question from Louise.
Yes.
No, people do come to our studio. The only exception to that has been during COVID. We've been doing Zoom appointments, and also occasionally, if it's a previous client and they live in a different city, we might send them a Dropbox of proofs, but we do not do it for clients that we don't know. Yeah. So if someone, you know, if someone's lives rurally, they probably live around the ACT somewhere, and we might have gone to them for the shoot, but then they can come to us for the purchasing appointment.
Mm-hmm. Kurt's asking, have you done Zoom sales sessions? I think that's a great question.
Yeah.
Kurt.
So just for COVID, we've thought about it a few times before and never sort of, you know, really had the need to experiment with it, but we did it during April because we closed the studio doors on March the 30th, which was later than some photographers, but still, you know, meant that we were out of action for the whole of April and into May, and we were catching up. We had about, I don't know how many there were, maybe 10. Yeah, there might have been about 10. Maybe it wasn't even that many, but it was probably a small batch of clients that we didn't get to show their photos before we closed. So we did them all on Zoom and it was great.
I was nervous really before the first one, and then 5 minutes in, I'm like, there's no difference really. Yeah. Like the only difference
except
is
they can't touch the,
they can't touch and they can't get a visual reference of all the products in the room. But other than that, I think the average was...
Yeah, it was on par. Yeah.
It was on par.
Yeah.
So,
really? That's fantastic. Yeah. And that's really fascinating to me because, and Kurt asked that same question. So I think that's really fascinating, but I imagine that the reason why you still got a good sell was because of the way you delivered the information and you educated them and you pointed.
It's the pre-education as well. And one of my tips in the top 5 tips for selling books is that, you know, doing in-person sales is like really important for selling books because people can flick through and hold it. But if you can't do that, you can manage to get close to it by having really amazing videos. Like videos of products are really important. We have a video on our website. Please feel free to go and have a look at it. It's nothing super duper high tech, but it does the job of educating the client really well. And most of our clients who've booked us will say that they've seen the video and it's already helped them start to formulate ideas on what products they might want from watching that. So it is a really good way of pre-educating people if they can't come in and, you know, see and touch things. So
all the sales work's done before they come in to see their photos.
Yeah, it's really the sales room is an opportunity for them to see their photos and then choose their favourites.
Well, Kurt said that that's what he loved about your website, the product videos. So I'm going to go and have a look myself. But I want everyone to know that the webinar will be available, the recording will be available on the events page after I've got it all sorted and uploaded, but you can watch this again.
Yay.
Thanks,
on that note, thank you guys. I've always loved your work, love it even more. And I hope that everybody was enlightened and inspired by that. And if you have any questions, feel free to fling them through to me. Katie, do you want to say anything about your webinar in the next 2 weeks? Because it's slightly different.
Yeah, so I'm doing, it's 2 weeks, isn't it? Or just under 2 weeks from now. So I'm doing one on personal photo books, which I'm super, super passionate about. And actually, like other people during COVID, I have been catching up on some personal photo book designs as well over the last little while with all of my free time, which is really free time, but anyway. And yeah, I've done some really, I'm really passionate about some of the personal projects that I've done and how I've turned them into books. So I've got a stack of content. I haven't worked out exactly how I'm going to put it all together yet, but as you can see, I do like a good chat, so hopefully see some of you guys at that one too.
I think it'll be fascinating, and there's some really interesting people who've signed up to listen to it as well. So yes, we'll maybe see some of you guys in 2 weeks' time. So today's the 28th of May, and Katie's next one is on Tuesday the 9th, I believe. So
excellent.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for coming, everybody, and for listening to us. And thanks for having us, Libby.
Pleasure.
We love Momento.
Well, it's mutual. Okay, guys. You guys rock, as they say. Love you guys. All the love is coming in. All right. See you guys later.
See you guys.
Bye.